Welcome to the Coca-Cola Halftime Show, brought to you by our friends at Coca-Cola, who always invite you to experience the Coke side of life. Our guest today, Matt Bailey. 30 years, Matthew, where has the time gone? Welcome to the Lafayette Sports Network Halftime Show.
John, thanks an awful lot for bringing me on. 30 years, I was really stunned when somebody mentioned that number to me a little bit earlier today, and I was like, wow. I know time goes fast, and in particular in the last 10 months, time goes fast. But yeah, it's been a great ride.
Well, you've had 30 years, and you would think in that time, Matt, you probably would have thought by now that you'd seen everything, but not so much the case. What has the past year been like for you in the throes of this pandemic?
It's kind of needless to say, it's been pretty unprecedented. You know, it's every day brings its own new set of challenges. Not quite a year ago, I can distinctly recall a basketball game here at the end of February last year where we're having discussions about recalling our students that were having study abroad experiences because this, what little we knew was that there was this strange virus that was rapidly spreading around the globe. And that some international travel was beginning to get shut down. So we had this very rapidly put together meeting that, hey, we need to get in touch with some of these international students and their parents and let them know we're bringing them home. And we thought that that was going to be short-lived. We had no idea what we were in for then. Certainly we know a lot more now than we did then. But it was again, thought to be very short-lived. And as we know now, it's not.
You know, Matt, the casual observer thinks about head athletic trainers. They talk about pulls and strains and broken ankles. Just a few moments ago, before we came on, you were talking to me about a whole new vocabulary that you've had to learn. You don't think of athletic trainers as dealing with viruses. Talk about how that's impacted your role here.
Well, you don't really think about the behind the scenes kind of virus kind of stuff, but you know, most campuses in Lafayette in particular, our athletic population among our college community is typically on the order of about 20-25% of the whole community. So it's a little bit of a bellwether what we'll see going on within the athletic community. If we start to see a certain team have a concentration of influenza spikes, then it kind of raises the tentacles a little bit among the healthcare providers that, hey, heads up, this might be the forewarning of a tidal wave coming to campus. And we've seen that in years gone by with various smaller epidemics. And in matter of fact, there was a number of years ago where there was a viral spread through the athletic department that led up to a pause through the whole college. So there is a little bit, there's certainly, when we look at the holistic perspective of treating the whole person, there is certainly the illness side of the equation when it comes to the treatment of an individual athlete. But no, you're absolutely right, John. Nothing like this. It's you give me an ankle and give me a knee and I can help you out. You give me COVID and it's a different kind.
And not to pile on you guys, but now they're talking about a condensed spring schedule, some of the fall sports playing here in the spring, and that's bound to put more stress on you in terms of the sheer volume and number of contests that you guys might be covering.
Well, what your reference is, the logistics of it are a very, very big challenge. There's not a doubt about that. But I find myself looking at it, it's all about perspective. I think it's a great privilege that we have this opportunity in front of us. The college has positioned us and the league has positioned us collectively to have the opportunities that are in front of us. And yeah, it is a huge logistical challenge. There's an awful lot of moving parts to it, but we've got some great people working at it. I mean, Sharita Freeman is an absolute rock star. I am so grateful for the amount of support that she has provided with absolute clarity time and time again. And the amount of work that woman does behind the scenes that no one recognizes, and nor would they normally. She's very heavily involved, and she's one of many components. You know, Dr. Jeff Goldstein, Dr. Annette Diorio, I don't know when they sleep. I truly don't. I mean, but they have positioned us to have this privilege of an opportunity in front of us. And there are a lot of logistics to go into it, but we've got some pretty solid plans, and we're just going to keep chipping away at the rock and see how it falls together.
In that vein, Matt, in the short time we have left, can you tell us a little bit about the COVID precautions that the college has been taking, from testing to the return to play, to that progression to get our teams back on the field and on the court?
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we only have a couple of minutes because we're kind of now back to the vocabulary piece. Isolation versus quarantine, resocialization versus recolonization, incubation periods and infectious periods. And then also having the prevailing concept that we have to have a very holistic approach for not only the individual, but the team health and especially the community health as a whole. So there's been a lot of preparations that were put in place with the testing piece. We have the great fortune, as a matter of fact, I just got my weekly PCR COVID test. Everyone on campus is getting a weekly PCR COVID test. There are some NCAA and league requirements for those teams that are into competition weeks. So for example, our football, field hockey, men's lacrosse, women's lacrosse, and so forth, all those teams that just started practicing this week, they still fall in the category of only getting the college requirement of a PCR, of a COVID test once a week. When you get into competition weeks, then depending on the sport specificity, then we'll get into multiple tests leading up to competitions. And that kind of assures both opponents that those folks within that tier one group, as we refer to it, that are competing against one another, are as cleared medically as we possibly could be. We have the most information that we possibly could to say, yeah, you know what, we're as protected as possible. There's some global foundations to this overall, though. We can't ignore just the normal bumps and bruises and dents that you and I were talking about earlier. The overuse injuries are at an all-time high consideration because of the unprecedented sedentary that we all went through for the last 10 months. We have some folks that are going out on the fields and courts over this week and the next couple of weeks that haven't been among the colony of their teams as well as the colony of their whole college community, for some of them for 10 months up to a year. So that resocialization plan is very structured, it's very intentional, and it's very gradual. All teams, basketball went through this back in November, and all women's lacrosse and men's lacrosse and track went through it in January, and all the other spring and fall sports that are on campus are going through it now. The first week is absolutely very intentionally gradual from an overall conditioning, so we can evaluate in real time. Can we move on to the next phase? And then the next phase would start to incorporate shared implements. There's a lot of discussion as far as how can this virus spread? Well, there's also a lot of uncertainty about how this virus can spread. So we want to be very gradually specific and intentional in our movements. So conditioning levels, evaluation, skill set, timing. That's a big piece of injury prevention, making sure that the skill set timing is back. And then once we have the strength coaches are involved with. Brad Potts' staff is just great with being on site and another set of eyes. All of the coaching staff, the athletic training staff, all these evaluations and discussions are going on in real time. A lot of the athletes they're completely they don't see this. They're not dialed into it because they're there for on the field activities, but they also know these activities aren't normal either. And then the last component would be the last phase. That's a real it's not really a hard line, but those collision sports of football, men's lacrosse, we want to make sure before they go into an actual competition that they have had as much contact during the 2 weeks leading up to that competition. Again, skill set development, timing, so that the injury prevention is there for those most at risk, high risk sports.
Matt, such a complex issue in such a unique time. Thanks for all of your help over the years and your support. Congratulations on a job well done. And thanks for spending some time with us here on the Coca-Cola Halftime Show.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. Be well, everybody.
Thank you, Matt. Again, we'll be back shortly after these words with stats, highlights, and the second half action from the Kirby Sports Center.